story, Robert ZEMEKIS, and our moderator, his friend, colleague, and collaborator, Tom HANKS.
Hi, Tom.
Hey, everybody. Great to be here. Boy, I haven't been over here for a while, but isn't Haunted Highland just a mess? It's just a mess. It's crazy. All right, we are I guess I'm the moderator. There's a lot of that. What do you know? You know what, Bob? Here's what it is. I'm going to pick your brain, and you're going to pretend to tell us everything you know, and we'll walk away entranced by all your bullshit. I've listening to it for goddamn years, so I'll put up with it for a while. I want to start with this story that Bob told me a long time ago, and it is you might recognize it. It is the beginning of bombs being here, and it is reflective of why you are all here as well. I'm going to set the scene. In a basement rec room on the south side of Chicago, a very young man is staying up late watching TV. How old was that very young man, Bob?
He was a sophomore in high school.
Okay, he's a sophomore in high school. What year was this, Bob?
Probably like 1966.
Think of yourself as a sophomore in high school in whatever year that was, but we're in 1966. Bob, tell us this story.
So this program I'm watching is the Johnny Carson show. And before this, I've always been fascinated with movies. I love movies. I always wanted to figure out how they did them. I didn't know. I loved watching action movies, westerns, war movies, anything with special effects in it I love to watch. Anyways, I was watching this show, and Johnny's guest was Jerry Lewis. And they were sitting on the sofa, and Johnny said to Jerry Lewis, "I understand you're a professor." And he said, "That's right, I teach at USC, I teach at the School of Cinema." And I stood up in the room, and I said, "School of Cinema? Does such a place even exist?" And the next day, I went to the public library, and I went through all the college catalogs, and I found USC, and I went to the School of Performing Arts, and then I went to the cinema department. It was only a department, obviously, back in those days. And I opened up this book, and there was a photograph of Alfred Hitchcock standing in front of a classroom. And I thought, I've got to go to California, and I've got to go to film school.
Yes.
And
Sound familiar, anybody?
Yes.
Okay. Bob.
Yeah.
How did you think it worked prior to there being such a thing as a school for cinema?
I had no idea. I had no idea how it actually happened. And I remember the next year seeing Bonnie and Clyde, which has a very moving scene in there where Gene Hackman is shot. And I fell in love with these characters, as we all do in this movie. And he was dying in this field. And I remember being just emotionally moved by this. And I remember having the thought at that moment, wow, there's real power here. And I got to figure out what this power is. And so then I really started to I got everything I could get my hands on to read about filmmaking. And then all of a sudden I found out, oh wait, there's a writer, and there's a director. And that's it. I just was, and then I started, you saw some of my work. I started with an 8mm movie camera, started making stop motion animation movies. And
How old were you when you started making those movies, you said? Younger than a sophomore in high school.
yeah, it's like I got a little bit, like maybe a freshman. I got a super 8mm camera that I could do one frame at a time. I was a big fan of Walt Disney, by the way, too, and all the Disney movies. So,
Thank you.
So I love animation.
you know, there's some people that say that animation is the truest form of filmmaking, because you literally start from nothing, and you create everything, including the lighting.
Well, I had to do animation because I had to have my actors do what I wanted them to do. And when you're a freshman in high school, you know, your actors get bored after like 10 minutes.
Did you work with buddies who were in movies?
I worked with my cousins and my sister. My sister was my main actress.
Okay, I'm gonna ask some questions about the specificity of the movies, because we're all here, and you might be as me, is if you name a movie that came out in the 60s or 70s, the 80s that I saw, I could tell you the theater that I saw it, right, where you live. I saw Swiss Family Robinson at the the Grand Lake at Oakland. I saw 2001: A Space Odyssey at the Century Domes on Hegenberg Road in Oakland. I saw How the West Was Won at the Golden Gate in San Francisco. Where did you see Bonnie and Clyde?
I saw my very first, there were 3 movie theaters in walking distance of that. I grew up on the far south side of Chicago, in the shadow of the Pullman shops, and there were 3 movie theaters that were within walking distance of my house: the State, the Normal, and the Roseland. I saw my very first movie ever at the Roseland, which was The Blob.
Oh, Steve McQueen.
Yeah. So anyway, I saw that part of the State.
Okay, but The Blob, by the way, who's seen The Blob recently? Anybody? Okay, The Blob. You tell me if Steve McQueen is not the most modern performance you've ever seen in that little tiny movie. He is unlike anybody else in movies at that, even in that movie.
And if you don't believe it in that movie, go see Bullet.
Oh.
Yeah.
Steve McQueen. All right, so The Normal, that was there.
It was called The Normal because on Normal Avenue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. And by the way, none of these theaters were sad.
About how often did you go to the movies?
We actually, now you have to understand, these were second run. These were always scratched prints, and I remember watching the movie, and then all of a sudden, 20 minutes into the movie, the color would shift, and I'd turn around and I'd look and I'd say, oh, the light's coming from another port, and that's where I learned about changeovers, because the prints they were scratched, they were dirty, and you know.
So a second run, who remembers second run houses? All right. Yeah, they'd be a little cheaper, maybe, but
and they'd be 6 weeks old.
At least, so if it was a big movie, it played in some of the theater downtown Chicago or San Francisco.
And we always went on Tuesday night because my mother got in for free. We went to the movies on Tuesday night.
2 for 1.
Wow. And
That was ladies' night. Right.
so, I'm gonna guess that would you look at these movies that were coming in the second run, and would you rush in order to see them because you couldn't get downtown and see them in the better screens on the better prints earlier on?
No, we just always had we didn't go. Yeah, people who grew up on the south side of Chicago when I was a kid, they did everything on the south side.
Okay.
So we waited for the movies there.
But you went regularly. You were regularly.
It was a thing because then, like now, it was always the most inexpensive form of entertainment.
There was interesting, what Bob said when we came in, there's, throughout, there's always been innovation. There were, depending on, what myth you read, there were some people that actually did say sound was going to ruin the art form. Because when you looked at it, the sound was horrible in those. You look at a movie like on TCM that was made in 31 or 32 or 33, it's all this kind of, oh yeah, what I'm gonna tell you right now, and it's just terrible, and it's boring, and in actuality, at that time, a great silent film was a cinematic masterpiece, so it was this very primitive kind of thing. Later on, of course, if you saw the early 3-stripe Technicolor films in the late 1930s, it did not look great. It looked too fake. It was colorful. So you have always been this guy that found out about something that you could do in a movie. Do you recall if you start with something like used cars or some of your early features? Let's applaud them. money, in order to get in.
Well,
What was something that you said? Hey,
Well, I always learned. It never started that way. The way it always started was, how can we do this in some way that has never been seen before? I would gather my team. And then someone said, well, there's this thing called a steady cam. Or there's this thing called, a split diopter, and those were the early things, and I go, oh, okay, well, maybe we can figure out a way to do it. I never walked around and said, I want to do a movie where I can use a steady camera. I never did that. So it was always what concerned the story first, and second, then how can we do it? And I tell you, because what I think, people say that I'm, an innovator, and I appreciate that and whatever, but what I think we're supposed to do as filmmakers is entertain. And I think that by presenting images and movies and stories to people that they've never seen before, is kind of entertaining. And it can be anything. It can be drama, it can be horror, it can be whatever.
And, okay, I'm gonna tell a professional show business story about working with Bob right now, okay? And he just said it himself. It's something that has never been, somebody has not done before. In Forrest Gump, we were shooting on like a Friday, we were down at the Wilshire Ebell Theater. That's where the set was, and it was for when Forrest was in the hospital in Vietnam, having been wounded. And all the scene was a guy walks in and says, Private Gump, and I say, yes, sir. And he says, you have just been awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. That's all it was in all the thing. And Bob, we'd been working all day long, and we probably had, an hour and 45 minutes left in order to get this thing. And Bob was saying, sorry, I'm gonna do an imitation.
No, it doesn't matter. Do my voice too.
And I will. We might use some salty language, so let's all be sitting there. And understand the clock is ticking, and it's expensive. Well, how the fuck are we gonna do this shot? And I said, well, here's an idea, Bob. I've made a few films. And if I'm standing here or sitting here, and a guy comes in and says, are you Private Gump? What if I stand at attention? And then he says, you have just been awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. That's what I said to Bob. Bob said, well, hell! Anybody can shoot that! Then he thought, and within, I'm going to say, a nanosecond, you know what we're going to do? Here's what we're going to do. All right. We're going to put the ping pong table up on its side, and Forrest will be practicing ping pong, all right? And it'll just be hitting the ball against ping. You know what we'll do? And we'll put this little piece of tape right here, a little 2-inch square piece of tape. And Forrest will just be sitting there, and it'll go really, really fast, and be hitting the ping pong ball right in that piece of tape, 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 right in that piece of tape. And then the guy will come in and say, are you a Private Gump? And you'll stop and stand there and say, yes, sir. And then he'll give it to you. How about that?
Yeah. But here's the great thing about working with Tom is he'll go, okay, and then he says, what do I do with the ball? And then it's like, well, you have to palm it. Then you have to be a magician.
The ping pong ball was digital. That was added. I just waved my paddle like this. But with the standard it is that I was going to have to put the ball and ping pong paddle on the table, and the ball would have to be under the ping pong paddle, but there was no ball in the shot. So I actually had it in my hand. And so I did it, and the time came, I just went like that. And so you see the ping pong ball under that. So that is, it's one shot, happened very, very quickly. But it started because Bob ZEMEKIS said, hell, anybody can shoot that!
But here's the thing, we talk about these visual effects and stuff, they only work because the actor makes them work. And Tom never chafed under any of that, spending himself in a pretzel and having to do this and that. He never said, well, it's going to destroy my performance if I have this ball in my hand,
Well, that gets into this thing, Bob, of how you said it also here. You never said, hey, there's this way of doing a shot that I want to do. It's not. It's like, what is the story here? What is the narrative? And what tool in the box or in my imagination can we use in order to tell this in the most unique way possible so it lands? Bob does this thing, and he does it in all the films that we did. We all have to agree in the cast what the red dot is in the scene. We get together for weeks, everybody, all the cast members and the writer, and we talk for weeks. We start at the first page and we work through the script, and if we get to the end of it, we go back to the first page again and continuously work through the script. And everybody can comment on anything. Sally Field could talk about Bubba. Eric Roth, who wrote it, we could all talk about any scene that we were in, anything that was in the movie, because Bob was always saying, oh, look, on the day when the sun is shining and going down and the clock is ticking, there can be no confusion about what that red dot is, what must happen in the scene. And what we don't, I mean, we could talk about that till the cows come home, but what the translation goes is, through Bob's head, is how to shoot it. And shooting it can often require something that we can't imagine because we're just a bunch of stupid actors who want close-ups, you know. And, we all just hear blah, 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 blah. My line, bullshit. And you have to take into account. And, no actor can be intimidated by the reality. By the way, did you just notice the first shot there, Marty McFly, Michael J. Fox. This is what a lot of times